Chapter 1. The Arrival on Eloria. The crystalline spires of Luareth shimmered like diamonds under Eloria's 3 setting moons, casting iridescent reflections across the city's smooth, silver-like streets. To the humans who had landed just hours ago, this was like stepping into a dream. Floating platforms carried them through a city that seemed more alive than any place they had ever known. Vines with bioluminescent leaves wove through towering structures, pulsating with soft light that harmonized with the faint melodies drifting in the air. The flora of Eloria wasn't just decorative. It was an essential part of the city's design, filtering air, providing energy, and even communicating through subtle shifts in color and brightness. It was a level of environmental integration that Earth could only dream of. Dr. Michael Carter, Earth's foremost expert on xenobiology, felt both awe and trepidation as he and his team approached the heart of the city. Alongside him were Dr. Elaine Foster, a cultural anthropologist, Major Tom Reyes, a military attaché, and Lydia Huang, a linguistics specialist. They were here as part of the first official diplomatic mission from Earth to Eloria, representing humanity in what could be the beginning of a new era of interspecies cooperation. The Nidari, the ruling species of Eloria, had been known across the galaxy as one of the most advanced and enigmatic civilizations. Their technology was almost indistinguishable from magic, and their society was structured in ways that defied Earth's conventions. But what set them apart the most was their beauty: graceful, lithe forms, skin that shimmered as though woven from light itself, and eyes that glowed like twin stars, shifting in color with every subtle change in their emotions. As the humans were led into a grand hall by their Nidari hosts, they couldn't help but feel out of place in their utilitarian uniforms. The Nidari, dressed in robes that looked as though they were spun from liquid light, moved with an elegance that seemed almost rehearsed. Every motion, every gesture was fluid, as if they were performing a dance only they understood. It wasn't long before the humans' attention was drawn to a group of 4 Nidari women who stood apart from the rest. They were the most striking beings Michael had ever seen, even among a species known for its allure. Lethea, with her silver eyes and flowing hair that shimmered like stardust. Nira, whose emerald locks rippled like waves in a breeze. Zelin, with intricate markings running down her arms that pulsed with a faint blue light. And Elira, the youngest and most curious of the group, her violet eyes constantly darting towards the humans as though studying every detail. Introductions were made and the humans were formally welcomed to Eloria. The Nidari representatives spoke in soft, melodic tones, their voices resonating through the hall like music. As they conversed, it became clear that the Nidari were not just interested in formal diplomacy, but also in learning everything they could about humanity, especially their biology. The Nidari were fascinated by the concept of species that evolved on different worlds, and it was evident that the humans were as much subjects of curiosity as they were guests. Throughout the formalities, Michael noticed Elira and her companions frequently stealing glances at him and his team. There was a mix of fascination and amusement in their eyes, as if they were struggling to hold back questions they knew might be impolite. The humans, aware that they were being scrutinized, did their best to maintain composure, though the Nidari's intense curiosity was a constant undercurrent. As the formal ceremonies concluded, the humans were invited to partake in a feast, an event unlike anything they had experienced. The meal was not just food. It was an immersive experience. Dishes made from plants that absorbed starlight and synthesized it into edible crystals were served, each one paired with ambient sounds and lights that enhanced the flavors. The entire dining hall was a sensory symphony, with colors, sounds, and scents blending seamlessly in ways that seemed impossible by Earth's standards. As the evening progressed, the Nidari women became more comfortable engaging with the humans directly. They hovered near Michael and his team, asking questions that ranged from the mundane, "How does Earth's gravity compare to Eloria's?" to the more personal, "What is the concept of love among your species?" But underlying all of their questions was an almost palpable sense of curiosity about human anatomy, something that the humans had been subtly evading. It was during a lull in the conversation, when the atmosphere was relaxed and the drinks had been flowing, that Lethea leaned in close to Michael. Her silver eyes glinted with mischief as she asked in a hushed voice, "We've heard many stories about human anatomy, but there's something we do not understand. What is it that you carry between your legs?" The question hung in the air, causing Michael to nearly choke on his drink. Around him, his teammates froze, unsure of how to respond. Lethea's tone was innocent, but the bluntness of her inquiry was shocking to the humans, who were unaccustomed to discussing such things openly. Michael cleared his throat, struggling to find the words. "Well, that's a bit of a personal question where we come from. Humans have certain parts of their body that are considered private, and it's not something we usually discuss openly." Illyra, whose violet eyes sparkled with curiosity, leaned in even closer. "But why is it private? Among our people, there is no concept of hiding our physical form. We discuss all aspects of biology openly. We even celebrate it. So why is it so different for humans?" The humans exchanged awkward glances, realizing that they had stumbled into a cultural minefield. How could they explain concepts like modesty and privacy to a species that saw physical form as something to be celebrated, not hidden? The Nidari seemed genuinely puzzled, their curiosity untainted by any sense of propriety or taboo. Michael did his best to navigate the conversation, trying to explain that in human culture, certain parts of the body were considered more personal and were often associated with intimacy, which was something humans generally kept private. But the more he tried to explain, the more it became apparent that the Nidari simply did not share the same cultural boundaries. The conversation eventually turned lighthearted, with the Nidari women teasing Michael and his team about their mysteries, laughing at the humans' obvious discomfort. What started as a simple question quickly became a running joke for the Nidari, who enjoyed seeing the humans squirm under their playful inquiries. By the end of the night, the humans were exhausted, not from the physical demands of the day, but from the mental gymnastics of navigating cross-cultural exchanges they had never anticipated. They realized that their mission to Eloria was going to be about much more than technology and diplomacy. It was about understanding an entirely different way of thinking and living, and they were just getting started. Chapter 2. The Curiosity of the Nidari. The morning after the feast, the humans were given a tour of the Elorian Institute of Knowledge, a vast structure that seemed to pulse with life itself. Unlike any building on Earth, the Institute was a living entity, grown rather than built, with walls that shifted and reconfigured themselves based on the needs of those within. It was a place where knowledge from across the galaxy was stored, not just in written or digital form, but in living memories, holographic projections, and interactive experiences. The tour was meant to be an opportunity for the humans to learn more about Nidari technology and culture, but it quickly became apparent that the Nidari were more interested in learning about humanity. As they moved through the Institute's many chambers, Illyra, Nira, Zelen, and Lethea stuck close to the humans, peppering them with questions that ranged from philosophical to deeply personal. The humans did their best to answer, though they quickly realized that their responses often led to even more questions. The Nidari had a way of dissecting every answer, analyzing it from every angle, and comparing it to their own experiences. It was both fascinating and exhausting for the humans, who found themselves constantly on the defensive, trying to explain concepts that were second nature to them, but entirely foreign to the Nidari. At one point, as they were gathered in a room filled with holographic displays of various species' anatomies, Illyra turned to Michael with a curious expression. "Please don't take offense, but we are genuinely confused. You seem embarrassed about a part of your body that's completely normal to you, but utterly strange to us. Why is that?" Michael sighed, realizing that this was the question they had all been dancing around since the night before. "It's not so much that we're embarrassed," he began, choosing his words carefully. "It's just that human society has developed certain norms about what is considered private and what isn't. Our bodies are, in a sense, our own to control and display as we choose. There are parts of us that we consider personal, not because there's anything wrong with them, but because they're tied to intimacy and relationships in ways that we prefer to keep private. Naira, her emerald hair catching the light as she tilted her head, interjected. But why? If something is natural and a part of who you are, why hide it? Among our people, there's no shame in any aspect of our biology. We openly discuss everything from growth cycles to reproduction without any sense of discomfort. To us, it seems strange that you would hide something so fundamental to your nature. The humans exchanged glances, realizing that they were facing a cultural divide that went deeper than simple anatomy. To the Naidari, the human concept of modesty was baffling, an unnecessary layer of secrecy that seemed at odds with their philosophy of openness and transparency. For the Naidari, the body was just another aspect of existence, no different from emotions or thoughts, and there was no reason to treat it as something that needed to be concealed. The conversation continued, with the Naidari probing further into human psychology. They were fascinated by the idea that certain body parts could be imbued with such significance, that modesty could be a social construct rather than a biological necessity. The more they learned, the more they began to see modesty as an intriguing quirk of human behavior, a relic of evolutionary pressures and social development that set humans apart from other species. What the humans found most surprising was the Naidari's complete lack of judgment. They didn't see modesty as inferior or wrong, just different. To them, it was a cultural artifact, something to be understood and studied rather than critiqued. Their curiosity was genuine, driven by a desire to understand how human society had evolved and what made humans unique. As the discussions grew more candid, the humans began to relax. What had initially been an uncomfortable topic slowly transformed into a philosophical debate about the nature of privacy, intimacy, and the boundaries between the public and the personal. The Naidari asked probing questions about everything from human relationships to social structures, seeking to understand the deeper reasons behind human customs. By the time the tour ended, both species had gained a newfound respect for each other. The humans saw the Naidari not as invasive or overly curious, but as genuinely interested in learning about a way of life that was entirely different from their own. And the Naidari, for their part, began to appreciate the complexities of human culture, realizing that there was more to humanity than just their physical form. As the humans retired to their quarters that evening, Michael couldn't help but reflect on how far they had come in just a short time. The Naidari were unlike any species he had ever encountered, beautiful, intelligent, and endlessly curious. And yet, despite their differences, there was a common thread of understanding that ran through all their interactions: the desire to learn, to connect, and to bridge the gap between worlds. Chapter 3: A Closer Understanding. The following day, the humans and the Naidari convened at the Institute once more, this time for a more structured exchange of knowledge. The Naidari had suggested that they hold a joint seminar where both sides could present their understanding of biology, culture, and social norms. The goal was not just to satisfy curiosity, but to build a foundation for deeper cooperation between the two species. The seminar was held in a vast chamber where the walls themselves seemed to be alive, shifting and reconfiguring to accommodate the needs of the participants. Holographic displays floated in the air, providing visual aids as both sides took turns presenting their knowledge. The Naidari, true to their nature, were open and detailed in their explanations, providing an in-depth look at their anatomy, reproductive cycles, and even the unique symbiotic relationships they had with the flora and fauna of Eloria. When it came time for the humans to present, Michael and his team took a more cautious approach. They began with an overview of human anatomy, explaining the differences between males and females, the functions of various organs, and the evolutionary pressures that had shaped their species. They were careful to maintain a clinical tone, focusing on the scientific aspects rather than delving into the more personal or intimate details. But the Naidari were not satisfied with surface-level explanations. As the presentation went on, Illyra and her companions began asking increasingly specific questions. Why are certain parts of your anatomy associated with shame? How do human social norms dictate when and where certain body parts can be exposed? What is the significance of clothing in human society beyond its practical uses? The humans did their best to answer, though they found themselves struggling to convey concepts that were so deeply ingrained in their culture. Modesty, they explained, was a social construct that had evolved over millennia, shaped by religious beliefs, societal expectations, and the need for privacy in certain situations. Clothing, while originally intended for protection, had become a symbol of identity, status, and even morality. The Nidari listened intently, absorbing every detail with the same curiosity they had shown from the beginning. But it was clear that they still didn't fully grasp the human perspective. For them, the body was a canvas of expression, not something to be hidden or restricted. They saw beauty in all forms, and the idea that parts of the body could be considered inappropriate or taboo was foreign to them. As the discussions continued, the Nidari proposed a more direct exchange. "Why don't we explore our differences in a more hands-on way?" Lithia suggested with a smile. "We can demonstrate our anatomy and cultural practices, and you can do the same. It would be an opportunity to see beyond words and truly understand each other." The humans hesitated. The proposal was well-intentioned, but it raised ethical questions about how far cultural exchange should go. Could they really justify such a direct comparison, knowing that it might cross boundaries of comfort for both sides? Yet at the same time, they understood that this was an opportunity to break down barriers and build trust. After a brief discussion among themselves, the humans agreed to proceed with caution. They set ground rules to ensure that the exchange would remain respectful and focused on education. Both sides would present their anatomy and cultural practices in a controlled environment, with an emphasis on scientific understanding rather than anything more personal. The session took place in a serene chamber filled with soft, ambient light and soothing sounds. The Nidari went first, presenting a detailed overview of their physiology. They demonstrated how their bioluminescent organs functioned, how their reproductive systems differed from humans, and how their symbiotic relationship with Eloria's flora influenced their biology. The humans were fascinated by the intricacies of Nidari anatomy, particularly the way their bodies interacted with their environment in ways that seemed almost magical. When it was the humans' turn, Michael and his team took a deep breath and began their presentation. They explained the basics of human anatomy, using holographic displays to show the differences between male and female physiology. They discussed the evolutionary reasons for certain traits, the social implications of gender, and the various ways human societies had developed norms around body image and modesty. As the presentation went on, the Nidari's curiosity deepened. They asked questions that delved into the psychology of human behavior. Why did humans associate certain body parts with intimacy? How did societal expectations shape the way people viewed their own bodies? What role did cultural values play in the way humans expressed themselves through clothing and behavior? The humans found themselves in a challenging position. They had come prepared to discuss biology, but they hadn't anticipated the level of introspection the Nidari would demand. It became clear that the Nidari weren't just interested in the physical differences. They wanted to understand the cultural and emotional layers that made humans who they were. By the end of the session, both sides had gained a deeper appreciation for each other. The Nidari saw that human modesty wasn't just about secrecy. It was a reflection of complex social dynamics, personal identity, and the need for privacy in a world where individuality was both celebrated and protected. The humans, in turn, realized that the Nidari's openness was not naivete, but a different way of valuing transparency and connection. As the session concluded, Illyra turned to Michael with a thoughtful expression. "We began this journey with curiosity about what's between your legs," she said with a hint of amusement. "But now we see that there's so much more to your species. Your modesty is part of what makes you unique, and it's tied to values that we're only beginning to understand." Michael smiled, relieved that the exchange had gone better than he had expected. "And we've learned that your openness is a reflection of your trust in each other. It's something we could learn from." The Nidari nodded in agreement, and for the first time since their arrival, the humans felt that they were truly beginning to connect with their alien hosts, not just as diplomats or scientists, but as equals who were willing to explore their differences with respect and understanding. Chapter 4. Bridging the Gap. With the cultural exchange behind them, the humans and the Nidari entered a new phase of their relationship. The initial curiosity about anatomy and social norms had given way to a deeper exploration of each other's values, beliefs, and ways of life. The Nidari, who had once been seen as distant and mysterious, were now viewed as friends, albeit friends with a vastly different perspective on the world. The days that followed were filled with a series of joint activities designed to foster cooperation and understanding. The humans introduced the Nidari to Earth's music, literature, and art, while the Nidari shared their own rich cultural heritage, which was deeply intertwined with the natural world of Eloria. The Nidari's art was not just visual, it was multisensory, combining light, sound, and even scent to create immersive experiences that resonated with emotions on a level the humans had never imagined. During one of these sessions, Illyra and her companions invited the humans to participate in a Nidari bonding ritual. The ritual involved sharing memories through a form of telepathic connection, facilitated by bioluminescent crystals that acted as conduits for emotional energy. It was an intimate experience, one that allowed both species to glimpse into each other's minds and understand their most profound hopes, fears, and dreams. For the humans, it was a revelation. They saw flashes of the Nidari's lives, their childhoods spent in harmony with the living structures of their cities, their deep connection to the flora and fauna of their world, and the sense of unity that permeated their society. In return, the humans shared memories of Earth, its vibrant cities, diverse cultures, and the struggles and triumphs that defined human history. It was during this ritual that Michael felt a connection with Illyra that went beyond mere curiosity. He sensed her genuine fascination with humanity, not just as a subject of study, but as something more personal. He could feel her desire to understand what it meant to be human, to experience the world through eyes that saw beauty in individuality and imperfection. After the ritual, as they sat beneath the glowing canopy of bioluminescent trees, Illyra turned to Michael with a smile that was both warm and knowing. "I think we've learned something important," she said softly. "It's not what's between our legs that defines us, but what's in our hearts. We may be different on the outside, but we share the same desires for connection, understanding, and growth." Michael nodded, realizing that the journey they had embarked on was more than just a mission of diplomacy. It was a journey of self-discovery. The Nidari had challenged the humans to examine their own beliefs and values, to question why they held certain customs and whether those customs truly served them. In turn, the humans had shown the Nidari that there was strength in diversity, and that sometimes boundaries and privacy were not weaknesses, but ways to protect what was most precious. As the night grew darker and the stars above glittered like jewels in the sky, the humans and the Nidari continued to talk, sharing stories and dreams that transcended the barriers of species. They laughed, they debated, and they grew closer in ways that neither side had anticipated when they first met. The following day, the humans prepared to leave Eloria, their mission officially concluded. As they boarded their shuttle, Illyra and her companions were there to see them off. There was no need for formal goodbyes. The connection they had forged went beyond words. Before they departed, Illyra leaned in close to Michael one last time. "Remember, it's not the differences that matter most. It's the understanding we gain from them." Michael smiled and replied, "And understanding is the first step towards friendship." With that, the shuttle lifted off, leaving Eloria behind as the humans returned to Earth. But they carried with them more than just knowledge. They carried the memory of a species that had shown them that even the most awkward questions could lead to the most profound insights. In the end, what had started as an innocent inquiry, "What's between your legs?" had become the catalyst for a lasting bond between two worlds. And as the humans looked back on their time with the Nidari, they couldn't help but smile at the thought that sometimes the simplest questions lead to the most important answers.